Welcome to the first episode of my crazy restaurant stories. I've been working as a dishwasher for 24 years in many of the chain major restaurants in the area I now live in. Um, I got thousands of crazy restaurant stories. Anybody who's ever worked in a restaurant, whether you're a dishwasher, whether you're a cook, whether you're working prep, whether you're working server, even a manager, you've seen it all, you heard it all, you've been through it all, you've done it all. um, The first major, no, I worked, no, my first restaurant I worked in was in Philadelphia, a small chicken restaurant. But moving on into, no, moving on to my first major restaurant, I worked at for 8 years called Classic Italy. Um, all the restaurant names are going to be changed for legal purposes. How I got hired at Classic Italy is a crazy story. So this is going to be my first episode. Um, when I was driving up into the area where all the a lot of the restaurants were actually pretty new. And I got there. I went walked into this place in 2001, and it opened only 3 weeks before. At the end of about at the very end of March, so it opened up very early in March 2001. I came in 3 weeks after it opened, and now the time of the day is very important to this story. I walked in at about 2 p.m. And back in those days, there was no smartphones, there was no internet that you could apply online the way you had to do today. You walk into these businesses to ask for an application. So I sat down at their bar. Right, to the front. Most any restaurant that has bars, bars right at the front door. And I sat at the bar and asked for a job application. And the general manager came out, and he was only with me barely a minute, maybe 30, 45 seconds, barely. He says, he didn't have the paperwork with him. Let me go in the office, get the paperwork ready. Okay. He went in the kitchen. Now, I'm going to repeat this word about 6 times because I always have every time I tell this story. I waited and waited and waited and waited and waited and waited. That waiting was a very long time, and it didn't seem that long to me. Now, remember the time, I walked in at 2 p.m. Apparently, there was a female bar manager, and she asked me, what can I get for you? No, I'm waiting for the general manager to finish the paperwork. He says he left for the day. And I asked, where'd he go? He says, maybe he went out back door. Because I didn't see him come back out of the kitchen to go out the front door. He left for the day. I said, what time is it? 5 p.m. I had sat at that bar for 3 straight hours. It only felt like a half an hour had gone by. Oh my God. It only felt like a half an hour, or less had gone by. I sat at that bar for 3 hours waiting for, and apparently the general manager went out the back door instead of going out the front door. And the bar manager said, well, I assume you'll probably be hired. I said, what do I do? I said, come back next day, and I assume you'll start. Well, yeah, I started that weekend, and I was there for it. And as hard as I'd never been a dishwasher before, as hard, difficult, rough, and dirty and disgusting and sloppy as any job can be of that type, the dishwasher, I almost quit. But the young guys that had trained me that night said, no, you did pretty good. You did better than us. I stayed with Classic Italy for 8 years, 2001 to 2009. So that's the very first crazy story I want to start off with. I sat at that bar at Classic Italy for 3 hours waiting for him. And yeah, I never brought it up until afterward. I encountered the general manager. I won't bring his name up. On Facebook a couple months back, and I told him a story. He laughed. He says, "That's a crazy great story." He doesn't remember it, of course, but I've often told how I got hired at Classic Italy, and it's such a crazy story. So thank you for listening. And there's many, many, much more crazy stories to come.